Good morning and welcome to Eye on New Hampshire. I'm Marga Bissett, and we have, as I've mentioned for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking specifically about the opioid epidemic here in New Hampshire. And this is the last in the series. And I wanted to end on, we won't call it a high note because that's just the wrong choice of words, but we'll end on a strong note because I'm dealing today with a very strong person whose name is John DeLena, and he's one of those people that's at the forefront of this crisis. He's with the Drug Enforcement Agency. Thanks for joining me, John.
Well, thank you for having me.
We've talked with people that are with recovery centers over the last couple of weeks, with the hospitals, with the fire station, with the safe stations, trying to get an idea on how everybody in the community is approaching this crisis. And I wanted to end with you specifically because the Drug Enforcement Agency is at the forefront of this. First of all, this epidemic, is this something that you thought you were going to have to deal with in the beginning, or was it something that accumulated over the years, or was it just all of a sudden kind of in your face?
You know, first of all, that's a great question, and it's a deep question. I've been here now for about 2.5 years in my role, and I came here specifically for two reasons. One was because it was a homecoming for me. You know, I'm from this area. I've been gone most of my adult life working for the government, and I had a chance to come back, which meant a lot to me. But more importantly, I saw this crisis starting to evolve, and I really wanted to be a part of the solution. So although there's no playbook for what we're dealing with, we've never seen a crisis like this anywhere in our country at any other time. The way you talked in your introduction about the previous groups that you've had in here is exactly how New Hampshire is coming together to deal with it, and how DEA and DEA 360, the program that we've been working on, it's bringing all aspects of this thing together. And that's why I smiled when I heard you saying it. It's bringing all aspects of this thing together to really fight this thing head on, because no single force is going to be able to stop it. We as a community in New Hampshire have to come together to deal with it.
It's been in the news. It's been constant, to the point where some people, I think, are like, wow, I had no idea. But then on the other side, you have these people that are being touched by it by family members and friends, or a death that was unexpected, or you didn't even know that somebody had an addiction.
Yeah, I just got the final numbers for 2016 yesterday. It's 485 overdose deaths in New Hampshire. You know, you can't go anywhere in New Hampshire or talk to anybody that isn't somehow affected by this.
Right.
You know, whether it's through their work, through their family, through their social settings, everybody knows somebody now that's dealing with this. And it's all the more reason why we have to come together. And it's not just New Hampshire, Margaret, to be fair. I mean, this is a problem that's facing our country right now, right? We're losing 150 Americans every single day. 150 Americans every day to this fight, and it's absolutely it's an unbelievable number. The latest, they're saying maybe 60 to 65,000 across the country in a year we're going to lose. It's too much. We need to push back.
We talk about the different factions I said before, you know, the recovery centers, all of that. What is the Drug Enforcement Agency's role in this? Because you're the guys that are busting the kingpins. You're the guys that are bringing some of these people to justice. But in the last year specifically that you and I have had a relationship, that there's been the DEA 360, where you're talking to school kids. It reminds me of Nancy Reagan's Just Say No to Drugs campaign. You guys are making this real for kids.
Yeah, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. Let's take the first part of it. You know, DEA, we're an enforcement agency, right? That's what we've done. We've always done it, and we've done a good job with it. We do it well because we collaborate with our partners, and that's really been the example here in New Hampshire. We work with all of our state and local counterparts to target the highest level traffickers. Remember, at the end of the day, you know, we hear people say all the time, we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem or anything else, and that's certainly true. But there are people that are profiting off of death and misery, that are taking advantage of the weakness of people that are battling this addiction, and that's what we focus on. And we're trying to take these cases to the highest possible level. We call it the command and control elements. Not somebody on a street corner, but somebody that's really influencing, you know, how these drugs are coming into the country, how they're coming into our region, and specifically how they're affecting New Hampshire. And that's what we do, and we do it with all of our partners: Manchester Police Department, State Police, even the most rural police departments in New Hampshire, Littleton, Lisbon, wherever that may be. We're working together to focus on that. But as part of DEA 360, we've had to look at things differently. We've had to really open our eyes to the community and try to be community leaders. We've taken on a different track here in New Hampshire. For me, it's been all about prevention and youth. That's really what the call was in New Hampshire. When I talked to people, the stakeholders of this thing, the community members, they said what we need is help with prevention and getting these kids involved. So as you know, back in March now, and it seems like so long ago, we had a huge rally here. And that is something that has affected the whole country. We had 8,500 kids, middle and high schoolers from around New Hampshire, come together for a serious message, but an uplifting message.
Right.
We told them the seriousness of it, but we told them we wanted to hear from them and we wanted them to be involved. We had a tremendous outpouring that day. The Attorney General of the United States flew in, and I'll never forget his words. He looked over and said, "You've started a national movement here." And that's been true, and they've been challenging DEA offices around the country to try to do an event like we had. And that means a lot to me personally, but I know it means a lot to the community. But it didn't stop there, Margaret. We then brought in the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, or CADCA, and they put on a 3-day training for 30 kids in our area, middle and high schoolers, teaching them how to build coalitions in their own communities, at their schools, their after-school programs, in their families, their neighborhoods, and stand up and be leaders, because that's what we need. We need these kids to be involved, and we need to hear from them. We ended that 3-day training with a town hall that we did, where those kids presented their ideas to us, to the governor, to the great governor of this state. Those kids got to have an audience with him and say, "Hey, governor, this is what we think you need to hear from our perspective." And we learned a lot that day. We learned that kids, quite frankly, they're not watching regular TV. Right? They're watching Netflix and Hulu, so they don't see all the messaging, the commercials coming up tonight at 11, the news stories. They're missing that. So all they're hearing about when it comes to this crisis is what they're hearing about in school and other kids talking and telling stories. They wanted some more facts so they could help deal with it. They want to be part of the solution. And proudly, we have this group now. We had some great sponsorship from Dartmouth Hitchcock. We sent 13 kids from the greater Manchester area to Atlanta, Georgia over the summer for a week-long training with CADCA, where they, again, highlighted how to be community leaders and how to build coalitions. And these kids are rolling up their sleeves and getting involved. And I continue to stay, as attached to these kids as I can. The key to this, Marga, is so important. Prevention is how we're going to stop this problem here, but it's a long-term solution to a problem that every day is smashing us in the face. Right? And people look for quick results. We're not going to get the quick results, but we need to sow those seeds so that years from now, we have better results than we're seeing today. And that's why I think it's so important to have kids come out to an event like Art Jam, that they're willing to give up their time to be part of a community solution. And that's what these kids are willing to do.
I think your passion about kids, first of all, is amazing. But that is why these kids are grasping the concept. And that, as you said, it's an educational campaign. We realize how serious this is. But of course they don't. They're involved in their own lives. They're in school. They're kids.
Yeah.
So, when you're bringing such a serious topic to them, what are they saying back to you? Are they surprised? Are they just, oh, we got to do something about this? What's their reaction generally?
Well, through the training that we did with them, we had them identify what they thought were risk factors and social barriers to this problem. And I'll give you one example. One kid said, every day I walk to and from school, I pass a certain corner store where they're selling drug paraphernalia. And everybody knows they sell drug paraphernalia there, and everyone knows that's what it is. And my walk to school and my time in school, I have to look at that store, and that affects me. Mm-hmm. So we were able to bring Chief Willard from the Manchester Police Department, and he sat down with these kids and said, "Hey, I want to hear from you. Tell me a little bit about it." And because of that, he's been able to go have meetings with the people that own that store. The kids told him about some areas where they know drug transactions are taking place to and from their walk to school. The chief said, I hear you loud and clear. I'm going to put some extra patrol out there. I'm going to try to do things to make it more comfortable for you in your school setting. So again, we're training the kids. The kids now have a voice and people are listening to them. And we want to continue that. The kids fall under this Empower Youth group that we stood up here with the Making It Happen Coalition right here in Manchester. They've done amazing things with these kids, and it's not stopping there. We have so many ideas that we're going to move forward to continue to grow this thing out. And we're going to be attached to the Governor's Youth Council. You know, the governor stood up on March 7th at that rally too. And I know he was just as amazed as I was when he saw the turnout that we had. And he said, we need to stay connected to these kids. We need to listen to what they have to say. He has a Governor's Youth Council, a group of kids from around the state of New Hampshire that answer directly to the governor, and they can bring him their ideas, and our group is attached to that. And there's several other groups throughout the state. The Raymond Coalition for Youth, another great, strong youth coalition that I try to go around to as many of these places as I can and stay involved.
I'll tell you what, the crossover, and I'll say there's... It's hard to say there's a positive thing that's coming out of this, but I will say one of the lights or the good points is that you mentioned the crossover. The relationship that you have with the police chief in Manchester, other police chiefs across the state police, fire stations, and the governor's council, things like that. It's something that should be highlighted because it should cross over into other parts and things and challenges that we have to deal with this in the state. But for this particular opioid crisis, has this been a switch over from how you've dealt with them in the past? Because you're constantly having conversations now.
You know, you bring up such a great point, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately and saying a lot wherever I go. Everybody's life has been affected by this crisis. Nothing we do in our personal or professional lives will ever be the same because of it. Now, that's easy for first responders, right? If you're a cop around here, you're going to be dealing with this, and you're doing things you've never done before. If you're a firefighter, look at what they've done with safe stations. You talk about thinking outside the box. They've put together a program. They signed up for that job to fight fires.
Right.
You know, they never thought that's what they were going to be dealing with.
No.
But it goes well beyond that. If you're a teacher, you're never going to be the same because of this crisis. We now have Narcan in public schools. We have kids that are dealing with addiction at home, and teachers are becoming, a different role than ever before. You look at you in the media. The folks in the media are having events like this and having guests like me, and where 5 years ago you probably wouldn't have a DEA agent in here talking about this problem. So it's never going to be the same. But it's a clear indication of New Hampshire and how we're willing to get involved and change. This is a fluid problem. It's rapidly evolving. We're having to do things differently than ever before. But New Hampshire is highlighted around the nation. And I know that from my role in DEA because we are a worldwide agency. And I do attend meetings all over the country talking about what's going on here in New Hampshire because people know, sadly, we're at the front lines in terms of the problem, but clearly in the front lines in terms of the solution. The things that we do, events like Art Jam, events like going into schools and having these discussions with kids, a rally like we had, people around the country are looking at us saying, that's amazing. That's an amazing response in the Granite State. How do we mimic the same thing?
All right. There's no short answer to this question, I know, but it's how I'm going to round up this entire conversation. Again, this is John DeLena from the Drug Enforcement Agency, and we appreciate all that you do. First of all, with the work that you do with the kids, the other work that is not talked about as much when you're bringing these people in and you're bringing them to court and bringing justice to these people that are dealing these drugs. But this question is tough, and I say that because again, I don't think there's an easy answer to this. Why New Hampshire? How did we get targeted as one of the dens, as people have called it? How did this happen here?
That's a question I get wherever I go. And I've been getting that question for the 2.5 years that I've been here. And I'm confident in my answer. So it's not a hard question.
Okay, good.
I told you at the beginning of this, this is a homecoming for me, right? I grew up in Revere, Massachusetts, not far from here. So I'm not coming in from LA or Chicago or Florida to tell you that I know what's going on here in New England. I'm a Boston kid, born and raised. And my roots have always been here. Wherever I've traveled, my roots have been here. Here's what's going on here in this area. We've always had a very strong appetite for prescription opioids in New England. That's what's always happened. I was a kid in the 70s, and I saw it. I saw it in my school. I saw it in my neighborhood. I saw it in my street, and I had it in my home. It's been around us always. Because of that appetite for those opioids, the cartels at the highest level, they saw a vulnerability here. They've always been trying to pump heroin into this market because they know that sooner or later, if you're abusing those opioids, we're either going to enforce our way out of that problem, and you're not going to have the availability of the pills, or you just can't afford them anymore because those pills are very expensive off the street. So they've always been pushing heroin into the market. And that's what eventually happened. When the opioid crisis around the country really reached its all-time height, That's when they flooded this market with the cheapest possible heroin they could, and more people let their guard down and they switched over to heroin. Then fentanyl came, and it came here first. It came into this region first, and it's been an absolute game changer for us. And that's what we're trying to deal with. We're trying to deal with people that, sadly are battling the opioid addiction, are willing because of the strength and just how strong that addiction is to try heroin and or fentanyl. They just don't know what they're getting when they get fentanyl. It's deadly every time.
And I'm going to say, as I've said to my own teenager, as I say to anybody, you just don't try it at all. It's not about experimenting as a teenager. It's just don't do it.
Absolutely. Parents, caregivers, family members, you need to have this conversation. And Margaret, these are hard conversations.
They are.
You're a parent and
Yep.
I'm a parent. These are hard conversations to have. I joke all the time that it's no longer McGruff in coloring books or Nancy Reagan like you talked
Yeah.
about at the beginning of this when we were kids. These are hard conversations. Kids are hearing in school about overdoses. They're hearing about fentanyl. They're hearing about syringes. These are hard conversations to have with 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds. But the minute kids can listen to you, you tell them not to touch a hot stove. You tell them not to touch the bleach under the sink or whatever else. We need to have those same conversations about the pills in our house. That leads me to the next thing. October 29th is the next drug take back, National Drug Take Back. In April, I came in and graciously, you guys had me on the air and we talked about how important it was for New Hampshire. And in those 4 hours in April, we collected 15,000 pounds of unwanted or unused prescriptions.
Pounds.
The largest ever take back for New Hampshire.
Right.
And I think we can beat that again this coming October. It's important. We have over 100 locations throughout the state. We make it really easy for people to drop that stuff off. It's no questions asked. You'll see all the locations advertised as we get closer, but I just wanted to put it out there because it's so important.
Well, and tell people where they can get more information on your website if they want to know more about it.
Absolutely. You can go on to DEA.gov at any time. You can call your local police department. Most of them have a full-time take-back box anyway. But here in Manchester last year, we had a really fun event at the PD. They really made it encourage people to come out there. We wanted to make it an event where it was kid-friendly, where kids could come out, and the chief had his SWAT truck out there and horses and canines. And I'm trying to encourage Chief Willard this year maybe to get him in a dunk tank. I don't know if I can get him to do that or not. But it's all about the community. People ask all the time,
Yeah.
what can I do
Right.
about this crisis? Maybe I don't have it in my home. This is something everybody can do. Those prescription drugs are ending up in the wrong hands. Let's get them safely disposed of and get them out of harm's way.
And I think that's the way to end this very important conversation. John, thank you for joining us again this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it and appreciate the work you do. This has been Eye on New Hampshire. I'm Margaret Bissett.